Welcome to the Saturday in Athens podcast. I'm your host, Seth Saunders, and we are fired up to be joined by one of our favorite guys to talk college football with, our good buddy Chris Marler, Vern Funquist on Twitter and all the associated socials. Our favorite pot stirrer, too, shall we say. I want to throw that in there, brother. Always good to see you. Are you like me, where you are nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs, or how are you feeling about tomorrow?
Well, I don't understand that reference at all. But I am nervous. I think there's just like I'm not going into the game with like a super big sense of confidence, but I didn't feel that way in 2021 either. I think it's gonna be a good game. I think that it's going to be. Anytime Georgia fans get this confident against Alabama, I love it. I just love it. And I know that sounds like you think I'm stirring the pot, but like I've been watching this I grew up in Georgia, and I've been hearing the same shit since like 2007, 2008, my whole life, and it usually has worked out really well in my favor. So I'm excited to see what happens on Saturday.
In that vein, I want to hit you with the stat that just had my brain in a pretzel for like the past 48 hours.
Okay.
So since 2008, Alabama has been an underdog 6 times. Okay.
Mhm.
Twice to Florida.
Yep.
And 4 times to Georgia, this game included, right?
Yeah.
And in the previous 5, Coach Saban and Alabama are 3-2, with the only losses, I believe, being the 08 SEC title game against Florida, and the obviously the 21 season national title game, but played in 22. Dude, which is just, it's insanity, right? Like, to have that level of excellence for so long, where you've only been the point spread underdog 6 stinking times. Like, just, blew my mind, man.
And to think about this too, that just to lean into the logo on my hat, like I take away the 2008 Florida game, which is like one of the greatest teams of all time. The other 3 games, they won by 32-13, so they won by 19. Then they were an underdog against Georgia in 2015. They won by 28. They were an underdog against Georgia in 2021. They won by 17. And then they were an underdog in the national championship game, and they lost outright. So, like, for the most part, when they've won too, it hasn't even really been that close. So I think you heard it after the 2021 game, Saban talking about the rat poison and how it was like really yummy after that 2021 game. It hasn't been as bad, I think, this year. And I think part of that is because Georgia is the standard at this point, and Georgia is the best program in the country. And I think that, like, if people are starting to like accept that, it's like maybe in Tuscaloosa, like maybe they're the last to get it. But Georgia is the standard. They are the best program in the country. I think Kirby has been the best, coach in the country. And so they know it's in front of them. And I think that, like, anytime Bama gets to be in the underdog role, I think they do kind of relish it because it's just so unfamiliar. And and you think about it too, man. Like, I'm not saying this like in an arrogant way, but it is sort of like the Bama privilege thing, I guess, which is I understand frustrating and annoying as hell. So, like, that's why I hate the fucking Yankees. Excuse my language. I should not have said that, but it's why I hate the Yankees. But, like, I think, anytime you get to be when you are the Death Star and you get to be the underdog, it's like, man, like, you're gonna doubt that. You're gonna doubt that team and that roster and that coach. So I think that is a role that they are probably going to relish a little bit.
Small tangent on this, and then we will talk SEC title game, I promise. But in what world was Grayson Lambert-led Georgia a favorite in 2015? Like, even when that was happening, I was telling my buddies and, like, my brother, I was like, this is insanity. Like, in no world should they be favored.
This is like my experience with Georgia fans, I think, is different than most, because I get called all the time. I just did a show with SEC Mike with Mike Bratton, and he's like, I don't even understand if you're a Bama fan or a Georgia fan, because whether some Georgia fans want to admit or not, I'm very, very complimentary about how good Georgia is, because they are the best program in the country. I don't see how that would be up for discussion or debate. Now, my experience with Georgia fans growing up in the state of Georgia and not being a Georgia fan, right? I grew up watching all the Mikes in Alabama, all the Mikes. I think I'm gonna earmuff it for a second. I think the last time that I was brought to tears at a game was that 2003 Georgia game when they broke like both quarterbacks' shoulder blade or like collarbones, and Bama was so decimated at that position they had to have a true freshman come in, run to the sideline, and run back for every single play because they didn't have a quarterback that could lift their arms physically to call in the plays. Like that's the experience I've had with Georgia fans growing up. But that 2015 game, man, I was like, I loved it because it was like, they came out. I think they were playing Nuck If You Buck, and Bama came out of the tunnel, and they blocked them coming out of the tunnel, and it was like, buddy, Reuben Foster, if he's not in jail, you don't want to do that to him. If you don't have like him like behind bars, you definitely don't want to piss him off. Anyway, so
that was the Scott Cochran funeral game, right?
That was 2008.
Oh, that was 2008. Oh God,
the blackout game.
Back.
They're wearing black. They're headed to a mother funeral.
That's right. See, I've just blocked that one completely out of my memory because that was that was not a great day.
We could cheer you up and talk about the game you're going to win.
Yeah. That was a tough afternoon if you were wearing the red and black. So I'm interested in this also. Where were you at on 4th and 31? Like where on your insides, where were you at?
I had given up. For sure. I think there really is. There's a small sliver of me that was like, it's never over till it's over. And in that game, especially, it's like, I tell you what, I remember talking to my good buddy, Graham Coffey, Dog Out West on Twitter and does like another Georgia podcast as well. And that game, when that game happened in 2021, I work at Saturday Down South and our 7 biggest days traffic wise in the history of the company, been around for, I think, 13 years. The 7 biggest days that they've ever had from a traffic standpoint are all Bama losses, every single one. So when that was happening, I was gearing up to go live, and I was like, we're going to lose. Like, the game's over. I was like texting Graham. I was like, I can't even watch. Like, is it over? He's like, yeah, it's over. And I just started like writing out like, congrats to Auburn, hell of a win. Like, they played their ass off. And I think I kind of learned my lesson from that. I thought there was like maybe a chance like of hope. And then when he dropped back, and he threw it, my first thought, I was like, that's got to be out of bounds. Because he threw it with such like, it wasn't like he was just throwing it up for grabs. Like he threw it with like it was like a little bit like precision and pretty hard. And then the ball kept traveling, and I kept looking, and I was like, why the hell is he in single coverage? And then like and then I was like, why is he in man coverage? And the defensive back has his back turned to the play. Like, what is happening right now? And then next thing I know, Isaiah Bond is getting a foot down. It is one of the things I think as like a Bama fan that you'll probably remember for a very long time. And it was a bad Auburn team. You should not be. Maybe some people say you shouldn't be super proud of that win, and I totally understand that. But it was just a really cool moment in a rivalry, in a series where most of those big moments that you see like played in like the reel before the game in the Iron Bowl are moments that Auburn ripped out Bama's heart, like the punt, Bama punt, the cam back, the kick six, like. So it was fun to kind of get one of those in there that was super improbable.
Well, I did think there was some beautiful symmetry in the fact that it's 10 years since kick six, and now there's an Alabama nicknamed game to mark in that stadium. So I did think there was some cool symmetry that, just as an independent college football fan, I love that. I was the opposite. I was like, if anybody on the planet is going to complete this pass, it is going to be Alabama.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I feel like Coach Saban is the only one that can overcome the voodoo burial ground that is Jordan-Hare Stadium. I mean,
what an incredible atmosphere, man. I just
unreal.
I think I foolishly posted some thing on Twitter that morning. I was like, I don't believe in voodoo, I don't believe in magic. And then you're like watching the game, you're like, they put up a stat that was like, going into that game in the 11 years prior, Bama was 6-0 in Tuscaloosa with a plus 160 total margin of victory. So an average of 26.7 points per game. And then in Jordan-Hare, they were 2-3 and had the total margin was like Auburn +3. And it's like, it's just, I don't know how, you can't explain it. It's an incredible place to play.
So for Saturday, I am interested in this because this has been, I think, one of the more interesting Alabama teams in a long time, mainly because post-Texas game, they were written off for dead. And man, you and me had talked, I think that week, actually. Yeah. We had you on the show that week. And I had told you then that for me, I thought Jalen Milroe, like, sky's the limit, right? Like, he is
Yeah.
such an electric talent, and it's been cool to watch him lean into that and kind
Yeah.
of become that over the course of the season. And look, man, I think the cool thing about him too is he's still got ceiling to grow into
Hmm.
from my eyes. Like,
Yeah.
he's not even close to being done yet. And Kirby described him this week as a bigger Lamar Jackson, which, boy,
Yeah.
uh, what a compliment, right? And how have you seen his maturation, and how exciting has it been to see him become what he is now, end of season?
Yeah, I think honestly, I remember saying to you on that show, that specific show, that if Jalen Milroe is the starting quarterback, it's going to be the most exciting 10-2 season Bama's had in forever. Because I just think that there was a limit, like a limitation at that position, especially with what you had around him at receiver
Hmm.
and running back.
Hmm.
Pleasantly surprised me. Yeah, they went 11-1, obviously, and so that was better. And but he's like at every point of the season, it seems like when they've tried to put the game in his hands, whether it's Bama doing it or the other team saying like you're going to have to beat us, like A&M. Like A&M was like we're going to take away the run, and Jalen Milroe is going to have to beat us through the air. He throws for 335 yards.
Yep.
I mean, like it was awesome. Tennessee, talk about like making second half adjustments. He arguably you could say. Well, actually, I'm not going to say that. Like he played at least even with Jaden Daniels in that game against LSU. I know that Jaden Daniels got knocked out early, but like Bama scored on 6 of their 7 drives prior to him getting knocked out of the game. Like the offense was just like unstoppable. It's been really really fun to watch. I think he's going to go up against I don't want to say a buzzsaw, but he's going to go up against a different group on Saturday, not just a different defense from like a statistical dominance standpoint or like how consistently dominant they've been under Kirby Smart, but he's going to see some different dudes. Like there's just people on that Georgia defense that are just not human. Like if you told me Nazir Stackhouse was 9 feet tall and 400 pounds, I would believe you, like 1,000%. Like he's the biggest human being I've ever seen. But I think that it's been really fun to watch him kind of take on that role and this with like a chip on his shoulder. And I'll tell you this too, it's a little bit like there's shades of like the Stetson thing with it. I know he's a 4-star Elite 11 guy that was not a walk-on by any means, but that Bama fan base was all over him about him being like the scapegoat for why they weren't doing this and why they weren't doing that. So I've really enjoyed watching him kind of prove everyone wrong, including me at times throughout the season. And I told you this too. I said this to you at media days. Like the problem with him not being the starter, like going back into the summer, was if you say that like you're not going to play him, you're keeping the best athlete on the field off the
Right.
field. Because the moment
Right.
that kid steps on like in between like the white lines and like on that 53.5, he's the best athlete on the field on either side of the ball. And so or on either side of like the sideline. So I think that it's been really, really fun to watch him grow into that.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, just from a pure college football perspective, he has been amazing to watch
Yeah.
because there is so much. He's just so dynamic, whether it be with his arm or whether it be with his legs. And I think he's done a nice job too of creating space with his legs and not so much just taking off, right? Like,
Yeah.
he elongates the play, creates opportunities, and then, dude, I mean, he can just flick it. And like,
Mhm.
he's I've said this a number of times. He is the combination of what has given Georgia problems all year defensively, right? And that's a quarterback that can extend plays and then hurt you with his legs. And I know there have been others that have had good games and done both and XYZ, right? But I think he is easily, without question, the most dynamic of the ones that they will have played.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm real interested to see what the response is to that, especially with no pop or the assumption
Mhm.
that there's going to be no pop, right? And look, CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson have done a just fine job filling in, and CJ Allen is going to be a phenomenal
Yeah.
player at the college level. But he's young, man, and like,
Mhm.
I'm interested to see what Tommy Reese cooks up and what they have from a scheme perspective. How big a deal is it? You tell me this with your own eyes. How big a deal is it that Jason McClellan's not going to play?
I think it's a big deal because it's from an experience standpoint, right? Like this is one of the best. This is one of the most talented running back rooms that Bama's had in the last 8 years. Oh shoot, hold on. This is my mom texting me about my dog.
Yeah.
Uh, she's asking if she gets a heartworm pill, and like part of me just wants to say no because I don't want to give any kind of help to dogs this weekend, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna do the right thing as a dog owner. No, so I think that with McClellan, this is one of the you heard it coming into the season. Like Justice Haynes has barely seen the field, right? Like Jalen Miller has been great at times. Rodo Williams has been like just like a rock back there, but like especially in between the tackles. Um, I I don't like Jason McClellan is not like a necessarily a home run hitter. Like he's not going to outrun everybody in the field. But he is going to help him pass pro, and that's a big
Yep.
deal. And I think that's one of the reasons he's been in there so much is because he's been so good in pass pro. I do think that from the game plan standpoint for Bama, it's hard not to look at like what's been effective against this Georgia defense throughout the year and given them problems. And surprisingly enough, it's been the run. Like it's what Cody Schrader did and Mizzou did, like getting on the edge and then with these like stretch plays. And
Yep.
I don't know if Bama's O-line is good enough to give them time for those plays to develop. I think where you're gonna miss McClellan the most is in pass pro though. I think that running backs that Bama has will still be able to get some yardage, and I think you're going to see more design runs from Milroe as well. To help with that. But I think that one thing, like Bama has shown in the past with like this game 2021, people forget like the receivers thing is like talked about it ad nauseum, but like Bama was down to basically 1.5 like scholarship running backs by the end of that season because they had lost a running back. It seemed like every third or fourth game, and we're down to who was it? Brian Robinson, and
Brian
then
Robinson. Yep.
whoever the 5-star was that was like said he was going to win the Heisman his freshman year, and then got into the horrible accident. I feel bad for not remembering his name right now. Transferred to TCU, but like they were
TCU. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh God.
I know.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like I think that it sucks. It sucks that like he's out for the game. I don't think that Bama was going to win this game or lose this game because Jace McClellan in any way.
Who is the offensive player that worries you the most on Georgia's roster? And I know the obvious answer that's 19, but I think that's also given if he's actually fully healthy.
Yeah.
Which Kirby's been real coy about this week. He's as tough as anybody, but I did think it was a little odd he didn't play after suiting up against Georgia Tech. And I know some people have said, well, they probably just held him out on purpose, but I don't know, man. That doesn't really seem like Brock's personality. Like if he could go, I think he would have gone. So there's a possibility that he's limited and possibility that Ladd doesn't play and a big possibility, I think, that Ra Thomas doesn't play. So
yeah.
3 big weapons possibly out. Like what makes you nervous about Georgia's current construction?
I would love it if one of those white kids doesn't make it to the game on Saturday. Like I said this on another podcast. Like if we need to figure out like a way to like text them an hour before and be like, hey, there's a huge sale at Kohl's. Like feel free to miss the game. Like maybe Brock or Ladd McConkey, they take part in that. I don't know. The one that scares me the most is Kendall Milton, to be honest, because I think that Dejon Edwards is a guy too that you'll see in the fourth quarter in this game that'll come in like once Georgia tries to start leaning on him. But Kendall Milton's been playing his best football since he stepped on campus there in Athens. Really in his last 3 games. I think that you've seen like over the last like the second half of the year, it's almost like when Georgia gets to the bye week that Kirby just tries to get to this decision. It's like, all right, well, like this year, it's been like Brock's hurt, so let's just like pick a name out of a hat. What receiver do you want to have a career game? Like Dylan Bell, you want to go up against Tennessee?
Yeah.
Awesome. This is your week. Like, but I do think Kendall Milton is like very dangerous. I think he can be dangerous in the passing game too. But I think if you're Bama, the secondary, like the defense is really good. The defense is really good, and people don't really give it as much credit. It's just not talked about that much this year. And they've struggled at times for sure, but like they're really good, getting after the quarterback off the edge. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue or a huge component of this game because you saw Will Anderson in a national championship game. Like you can be all world, and this Georgia team who's given up the least amount of sacks in the entire conference is only 10 all year is probably going to handle their business like they do every single week. But if you are able to force some turnovers, I think for Bama, what you're going to need to do to win this game, it would be in the passing game and like with Carson Beck, maybe making a few mistakes, maybe with like one of those, cornerbacks. The secondary has been elite all year. But I just think that if you want to really take the wind out of Bama's sails early and you want to show that you can run the ball down their throat, like Auburn did for a lot of that game, they were averaging 8 yards a carry. That would be very damaging, not just I think to like, time of possession and keeping Milroe off the field, keeping the offense off the field, but to the psyche for Alabama. Like if you can't stop the run against Georgia, knowing what they have in like the passing game, they're going to be in huge trouble.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's the key to it, right? And I mean, Kirby obviously always harps on that. So does Coach Saban about if we can establish the line of scrimmage, we're
Yeah.
doing what we want to do. I think the other piece of that is, and you bring up a great point, is I think Alabama's pass rush versus Georgia's offensive line
Mhm.
is maybe the key matchup in the game. Reason being, Carson really hasn't been touched all year. And he's got, quickest time, ball
Yeah.
out of his hand, and all the SEC. So obviously he's being efficient with it. But the other thing is he hasn't had to, I think, make decisions under pressure. And look, maybe some
Yeah.
of that's chicken or egg, right? Maybe Carson, I think he has been very good about making the right decision, making the right read, knowing when to get rid of it, all those type things. But I'm still compelled to see if he gets in a situation where they're in his kitchen,
Yeah.
is he going to make the right choice? And so if Alabama can force that, I think, we're going to see what Carson can be. I will say it, and I'm interested to hear your opinion on this too, man. Carson has surprised me this year, and
Mhm.
I'm not scared to say that. It was not my expectation, that he would be as mobile as he is. And I'm not saying running for a ton of yards. I'm just saying creating where he has to create.
Mhm.
And then also, man, he has been unflappable.
Mhm.
Like, just I just wasn't expecting it, man. Like from an
Yeah.
intangible perspective, he has been so much more than I anticipated.
Mhm.
Like, where are you at on that? Like, has he been more than you could have imagined before season started? Like, if we were having this conversation in
Yeah.
Nashville, I don't think either one of us would have said this, right?
Well, he's got to be a pretty cerebral guy because he's got the biggest forehead in the country. So, like, I mean, it's like a Peyton
I was
Manning
waiting
film.
for that dig. I put
I
that
don't
on the
know
queue
how he
for you.
even fits it in that helmet. He looks like Marv after he got electrocuted in Home Alone 2. But I mean, I think no. If you would, I don't think it would have been something. I remember talking to Brooks Austin about this at media days, and I was like, "Give me your boldest prediction of the season." He's like, "I think Carson Beck gets invited to New York and win the Heisman." I was like, dude, you're talking about a former 4-star Elite 11 quarterback who has had 3 years in the program to get ready. I'm not going to bring up the competition they faced. This is the best defense they faced by a long shot. So I think that like that's not taking anything away from what Carson Beck's been able to do. It's been like they've been incredible. Like I mean, 3,500 passing yards. Like I mean,
Yeah.
3,500 passing yards.
Yeah.
And I think you brought up the mobility thing. There's going to be at least once, and I think it might be in a big moment where he is under pressure and his mobility gets a first down because he is. I don't think anyone takes into account that like he can run because he can a little bit. Like I don't think they're going to put any design runs in, but he can move around in the pocket a lot. But you're right. Like I think like the unflappable part of it, I think is very, very important. And he's kind of had to face some of that criticism at times throughout the year, where it's like, especially early in the season, some of those games that were like a little bit tighter in the first quarter, first half than people expected. He only has like 22 touchdowns, right? Passing. Like it's like he didn't put up like gaudy numbers, even though he's got 3,500 passing yards. And I think so he kind of flies under the radar, but he has been one of the most efficient's not the right word because he is very efficient, but like like explosively efficient throughout the second half of the season, where he's like hitting chunk plays. They're able to really do whatever they want in a lot of positions. Like even the Ole Miss game, man. Like I mean, like remember how happy Florida was on the first drive?
Yeah.
Like remember how happy that entire
Yeah.
fan base was, and then the rest of the
Yeah.
season went to shit. Like I think that he is a really, really good quarterback with a good head and shoulders. And I think one of the keys too is that's why I keep bringing up the turnovers thing with Milrose. I don't think that Bama can overcome one to multiple turnovers. I have zero doubt in my mind that Georgia can. Like unless it's something where it's like pick six, we have a turnover deep in our own territory. I just think that that's not going to phase not only Carson but the entire team.
Yeah, that's a great point, and they haven't had to do that this year, right?
Yeah.
I do think there's something to that. I will say, of the last 3 years, this is easily the most, and I'm going to say this, as a broad base, but the most battle tested team, meaning
Hmm.
they've been down. I think the regular season's 21 and 22. There just wasn't a lot of adversity in
Yeah.
game in the regular season. That's not been the case this year. They have not been the same juggernaut as previously, but I think in some ways it's prepped them better for this environment because
Mhm.
they could very easily be behind in this game. And I think there's a mental component to that of, look, man, we've been here before. Just stay the course, as
Yeah.
opposed to, I think in 21, man, they got punched in the mouth and we're like,
Mhm. Had no idea what to do.
I don't really know what to do right now.
I
And
dude,
so,
I said to Graham Coffey and Brooks Austin on like a Twitter space like that week. We were doing a bunch of like prep or preview stuff for it. I remember saying the key to this whole victory in 2021 is like you have got to put Georgia into a spot they are completely unfamiliar with, but also
mhm,
all too familiar with because they have not been down all year. They have dominated every single team. It seems like from start to finish. They I think they only had trailed like for like something like in like the single digits that entire season or something crazy.
yeah, yep,
And then, but like I don't know. I think that you could say the same thing, and I've said it a little bit this week, like with on like previous shows and stuff. You could kind of make the same case in terms of like trying to get into their psyche, like put them in an all too familiar spot that they haven't really been familiar with this year. And that is like, oh my God, it's late. Like, what if we start like it's football, man. It's gonna be 60 minutes where anything like things happen in games. Like,
yep,
that 2012 game where like I think they're up, Bama's line to kick a field goal, and then all of a sudden Georgia blocks it and they're up by 11, like just like that. Like if something
yep.
like that happens and like the momentum shifts, I do think that it will affect the fan base because the fan base will look around and Mercedes Benz, whether they want to admit it or not, like it has been the phrase I've used all week is a house of horrors. I mean, like you will look in the one end zone and say like that's where Devontae Smith ripped our hearts out. That's where Jalen Hurts did it the next year. That I think can affect the fan base. There's nothing that's gonna penetrate that locker room or that sideline or Kirby Smart that's gonna make him scared.
So I think as of today, I'll close with this with you, brother. I think the line, depending where you're getting it, is somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you sitting on that? Well, if you were putting hard money on things, what are you picking?
5.5 is the worst spread in all of sports. It is the I hate it more than anything. I remember reading like an article like in I forgot what year it was. It was like 2012 or something, and it was like 73% of spreads that are 5.5, the underdog covers, and in like 29% they win outright. I just hate that spread. I just hate that spread. Um, I will also tell you that I think that this to me feels more like the national championship game spread, where it's like you're giving Bama a little bit more credit than you should because the logo and that like you look at the Bama helmet on like the other side of that G and you're like you can't put them as a double digit favorite over Bama, right? Like, but I remember in that national championship game, one of the bets I made was an alternate line of them covering 10.5 because like it just felt like one of those things where it's going to be a close game. I think for maybe 50 minutes. I think it'll be a close game. I don't know if it's a defensive battle or offensive shootout. I think the two teams are going to mirror each other, like with their style of play and match each other, like on the scoreboard, especially for the first three quarters. But I just feel like Georgia at the end is going to pull away, and I think that they win by double digits. I think it's probably I have it like 35-24, something like that, because I think that they'll be in a position late to just lean on them like they did in the national championship game. And I think I just think that Georgia's a better program right now, man. And I hate to say it. I'll be pulling against them obviously on Saturdays as a Bama guy, but I think you just have to really tip your cap and give credit where it's due. And Kirby has built a machine in college football right now that no one is on par with, and they're just executing at a different level and operating at a different level than everyone else. So I think Georgia wins 35-24.
Given Georgia's defensive history this season, I feel like one of your best bets this week has to involve Alabama scoring on their first offensive drive.
So here's I think the best bet of the whole, like from a prop bet standpoint. I was looking at this on our show, and I think here's what I like the most. I like Georgia to cover. I like Georgia, their team total over 27.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, 30.5, because I think they'll score over 30. I like Bowers over 54.5 receiving.
Mm-hmm.
I love Carson over 1.5 passing touchdowns. But from a prop bet and a value standpoint, Bama to be leading at the half and Georgia to win outright is plus 700. And
Ooh,
that is a ton of value in
yeah,
this in the way that Georgia has played in the first half of games this year. There is a ton of value there.
yeah. Well, I like that.
Yeah.
Y'all listen in. If you're gonna bet hard money, that's a nice little play. I like that
Yeah.
little nugget right there.
There you go.
All right, brother. Well, what's the plans for the game on Saturday? You watching in the house or what? What's the game plan?
I'm recording this from my girlfriend's apartment in Atlanta. I got roped into a wedding shower the weekend after the Bama South Florida game because I thought there was no chance they were going to make it to this game.
I'm so happy about this.
I'm not.
That made my heart smile like the Grinch's hair in the
Oh,
rain.
good for you. Good for you. Also, she's an Auburn grad, so she's heard everything you made me tell you about the pick or the 4th and 31. So I'm sure I'll get in trouble about that too. Listen, I've been to like a bunch of these, and I think it'll be a great atmosphere. I definitely wasn't going to pay the price to get in because the ticket price is just crazy to get in, which I think speaks volumes about how like Georgia fans travel, even though it's a close game, but also Bama fans like not completely giving up and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a tremendous game, man. But I will watch it from the confines of, I don't know, whatever place this wedding shower's at, and then if we win, I'll watch it from the confines behind bars probably because I'll be so excited.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, brother, I am coaching my son's 5th grade basketball team, and we have tip at 3 p.m. on Saturday. Worst timing ever.
Hold on. Let me just tell you a story about how to get out of this. If you really want a way to get out of this, this is a true story.
I'm all ears.
In 1994, the first ever SEC championship game in Atlanta, I was on a travel tennis team, and I had a match at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. Bama's playing Florida. They're 11-0. They're ranked in the top 5. I think they're 3rd at the time. It was a year where like Nebraska was undefeated, Penn State was undefeated, Bama was undefeated. They had a chance to possibly win the national championship. They were 11-0 going to that game. I was 8. I ended up being asked to. I was kicked off this travel tennis team because I threw a match, so I could go watch the SEC championship game. And then the worst part about it, though, was that when I did, Bama lost by 1 point, 24-23 to Florida, because my buddy Chris Doring decided to break my little 8-year-old heart with a game-winning touchdown. But it can happen. You can throw that basketball game. Trust me.
See, this is why you and I get along, brother. Because that is so something I would have done to attend a
8-year-old Pete Rose.
Yep, I feel that. I feel that. I feel very seen right there, my friend. Well, look,
best of luck in the game,
we always love getting to talk with you about this, especially when it comes to the Dogs and the Tide. And I'm sure I'll be shooting you some texts on Saturday. But thank you for the time as always, brother. And y'all be sure to have those Twitter timelines programmed to our boy Vern Funquist, because it's always going to be something spicy that we get to see during game day.
On that note, I'm going to leave. I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, buddy.